Good evening. This is Bob from BBD. Monday the 31st of August. August has gone by. More than half the year just whizzes past us. Some news, important indicators as we all, China, India, the United States, Russia, vie for honors in the vaccine world. There's this, it says the first report from in the Hindustan Times, vaccine diplomacy in India's outreach plan. And apparently it's got five strategies. One is free distribution to immediate neighbors. Then the second is heavily subsidized supplies as part of India's international commitment. Third is striking market price purchase deals with countries with supply guarantees. And four is approach nations for trials of Indian vaccine candidates. I guess there should be some candidates. And the fifth is approach nations for co-production of Indian vaccines once approved. I think India is moving and powering ahead here, and I may win the game against the cowboy style attempts being made by either Russia or China. Interesting note from Dipanjan Roy Chaudhary. Amid Chinese trials, India and Bangladesh companies signed business deal. And this is between pharma major Beximco Pharmaceuticals and Serum Institute of India. So obviously, we are talking about here probably about the AstraZeneca, but this is, I mean, you can put the two and two together about as foreign secretary's visit to Bangladesh, where I said that the Bangladesh government had more or less declined to use Chinese vaccine, and they should, because they don't want to be guinea pigs to this untested, untried serum manufacturing. Because China really hasn't had a successful vaccination program at all in its entire life, right? Then, and another interesting news: ASEAN agrees to review trade pacts with India. Concerns over China misusing treaty to push goods, fewer benefits for domestic exporters. I think this is very important, because this is one of the few free trade agreements which again totally worked against it and had to be reworked. I'm glad that the ASEAN nations have finally got the message and are willing to talk about it. But we got to keep worrying about our periphery, because while we may have won the initial battle with China and Maldives, here there is a report from Sachin Prasher says Maldives banks on Indian projects to rein in pro-China opposition. What's happening there is a whole bunch of opposition party, the Yameen's party, that's out on the streets. India needs to be very, very vigilant and deliver and ensure that, having taken this piece of this relationship back, it doesn't lose it by losing focus. Very important. While we talk about our neighborhood, I'm not sure what happened here, but there are protests in Mauritius over dead dolphins. This is about that Japanese tanker that was being captained by an Indian captain that ran aground and broke into two and has caused an ecological disaster. India needs to be there full press. This is another nation that we really need to keep on our side fully. Prime Minister Modi says, while everything else is going on, a lot of people might say this is inane. He says, PM focuses on school kids, diet, purposes, nutrition report cards. This is important. But it's amazing that nutrition is critical for our youngsters and their growth. However, it's contra to what most of these states BJP states go ahead and do, in which where it essentially takes out the protein from the diet. I mean, you may want to run counter to the whole process of science, but things like eggs are critical for nutrition at that young age, and there's no point denying that to our children at this age because of some religious reasons. Then Modi rightly bats for local toy industry, urges people to support Desi apps. This again is important, because the fight has to be won in the mind of the people if you want to reduce dependence on China. That's a good move, I think. Now, there was a report of ED freezes accounts of 4 Chinese firms. These are the guys, in my view, who are actually doing hawala and funding terrorism on one side and separatism on the other side. I mean, when I say the other side, it's the northeast, and terrorism on one side. India needs to keep its powder dry. And look at this. This must be really worrying to them, because Vikram Sharma reports in the Deccan Chronicle, Chinese embassy keeps a close watch on investigating into betting firms. Why? Hey, why? Tell me why. Why would the Chinese embassy do that? Something is wrong. It should be sending alarm bells ringing all over the place. Then there is a message to China, which obviously comes a day after what I said in my broadcast. It says, for long, New Delhi has bought into Beijing's argument that border issues can be compartmentalized while the two sides pursue other aspects of their bilateral relationship. But the Galwan Valley clash and fresh claims to Indian territory have given the lie to Beijing's proposition. Thus, New Delhi has little option today but to link the overall state of India-China ties to Beijing's willingness to restore status quo ante on the border and ultimately to resolve border disputes with India. China, as I said earlier, Ambassador Bambawale had said, you can see through them. They want this side of the relationship to continue smoothly so that their economy can keep going, so that they can keep raping us in terms of our technology. But what they don't want to do is give in where it comes. And India obviously now can't disconnect the two. It's done it for too long. Then it says, thus Beijing cannot be taken at face value without matching actions on the ground. Here, the India-Russia question looms large too, and I've been talking about this earlier. Given Western sanctions on Russia, Moscow's own aggressive actions abroad, including taking a hand in US elections, and the looming confrontation between the West and China, while Moscow deepens its partnership with Beijing, the situation is fraught. Here I'd like to be a little bit note of caution, because there is definitely a break developing between Moscow and Beijing that we should be watching for. And we should drive a truck through that door if we see open daylight. We should be ready and ready and ready. This is not going to last for long. This is going back to the Mao era, where there's a massive rupture in the 50s between the USSR and China. It can happen again. And this time it will happen over Vladivostok. Then he goes on to say, New Delhi must walk a diplomatic tightrope here and make some hard choices if called upon to do so, keeping in mind that the China-Pakistan axis is currently its principal strategic rival that is working hard to constrain it in every way. It's no longer Pakistan. It's no longer Pakistan. So when we have this conversation that goes on about, kind of overplays itself as it does sometimes about terrorism and Pakistan, I think at that time you've lost the plot. As Claude RP writes, Chinese mischief likely in Himachal and Uttarakhand too. It's difficult to talk to China. They always play by their own changeable rules, promoting their own interests. And this is important. Everybody is saying that. We've got to listen, we've got to listen and act accordingly, folks. And then you have this one by Chalet, says, China must build impregnable fortress for stability in Tibet. You then have them saying, time to Sinicize Tibetan Buddhism, build fortress around Tibet, says she. And this is our real ace in upper sleeve. It's Buddhism. You cannot let it be Sinicized. For that, you really have to adopt Dalai Lama. You cannot let Buddhism be Sinicized, because if Buddhism gets Sinicized, then you have a big issue, because you really lose the opportunity to culturally influence all of Southeast Asia and even maybe Sri Lanka. You cannot allow this to happen. And you can do that by playing the Dalai Lama card and the Tibet card. It's about time. But while this is happening, China usually do it to make us feel, soft and cuddly and all this. It's China to unveil bronze statue of Indian dog coatless. Let's not be swayed by this, though I think some people will get teary-eyed. But I think this is part of the Chinese ploy of trying to keep us on the back foot. But always remember, in China, things are not as hunky-dory. As it says, purge paves way for Xi to assume Mao title and hold on to power. Chairman post offers president means to stay in charge beyond second term. He says Mr. Xi's war on graft has already felled top political rivals including Zhao Yongkang, the public security chief, and Sun Zhengshai, the party secretary in Chongqing. Why this is important is things are not as hunky dory internally in China. You've got to be able to understand that and use that to our advantage. And then Champagne, who's the foreign minister of France, he goes ahead and says, Champagne crossed paths unexpectedly with his Chinese counterpart, the hard-nosed Wang Yi. The word I'm talking about, I mentioned this in my previous broadcast, but it's the word being used in the Globe Mail by a journalist from Canada. Hard-nosed, and that's what he is. And we have to realize that. If he is hard-nosed, we have to be equally hard-nosed. Our foreign minister, external affairs minister, has to be hard-nosed and go hammer and tong at Wang Yi, because he's not. You really don't want to meet a person like Wang Yi in the dark street, man. I can tell you that. We are not prepared. Things are not looking obviously good for Hong Kong. It says China detains fleeing Hong Kong activists. It says Hong Kong pro-democracy politician held over unrest. This is what's happening on China's side. Then you have similar dictator kind of attitude and happening in Turkey. As you say, Erdogan's war games in Mediterranean defy calls for calm. Tensions over drilling between Turkey, Greece divide EU leaders. Where the EU have messed up is they've always thought Turkey as a bridge between Europe and Asia. Here they forgot that Turkey is really not Asia and connected to any of us on this side. Then it kind of thought that it was a bridge between the Europeans and the Muslims. Here again, they got it all wrong, because Turkey does not represent the Muslims of the Middle East. I mean, ever since the Ottoman Empire, Turkey and the Arabs have been absolutely the least kind of buddies with each other. So there were totally miscued assumptions by the European Union. But Turkey's got a share of grief too. He says why Turkey is bracing for yet another currency crisis. This is the second in 2 years. And then it says, in Turkey, the specter of economic collapse looms. But for Turkey, the currency crisis, the second in less than 2 years, combined with the pandemic, presents a heightened risk of economic collapse. So I'm not even sure why he does this. Why the hell? I think it's all, again, it seems like diverting attention. That's what all these guys like Erdogan do, man. And then create false illusions for the other dimwits like Pakistan and everybody else who thinks Turkey can save them and is there. And obviously the bad boy Russia continues in its ways. Putin mobilizes security forces to quell Belarus street protests. He's not given an either. He has no money. So they're all penniless guys. Turkey, Russia, well, they all want to show their muscle. Amazing. And then he says, Putin ready to send forces to Belarus if necessary. South China Sea continues to sink. US warships sail close to disputed island in SCS. US defense chief says China destabilizing Indo-Pacific. Again says US warships sails near disputed Parson Island in South China Sea. And then this report of China test fires its career killers in warning to the United States. World is in a flux. When the world's in a flux, a decisive move always pays off. Can India do that? Jai Hind.